the serpent me beguiled and I did eat. And this is the passage that Professor Castan suggested I underread. The serpent me beguiled and I did eat, which when the Lord God heard, without delay, to judgment he proceeded on the accused serpent, though brute. So who's being judged here? Help me. I mean, this part's the easy part. It's
the serpent?
The serpent, right? He proceeded on the accused serpent, though brute. So even before we read this, what's the problem that Milton is addressing here? We've got two parties, the serpent and Satan. See, you got to do something with your mic. We got two parties, the serpent and Satan, right? And what's the practical problem?
The serpent has no, is not really the guilty party.
Right. That here God is judging.
Will.
Pardon?
It doesn't
Right.
have the will to be
Okay.
judged on. It's a brute.
Right. So that's in Christian tradition, this becomes a problem because is there a rabbinic tradition of Satan in the Garden of Eden? Or it's always just the snake? There's no difference between the Nachash and anything else. Snake is the snake.
It's probably a Jewish tradition.
There is a discussion in the Gemara about whether the snake is Satan.
Right, but I think
Okay.
when they refer to the garden, it's mostly focusing on the snake as opposed to the fact that it is Satan.
Right. I mean, most of our traditions, you think about the Nachash himself is thought out of somehow as being invested in he's evil himself.
Right.
Right. He's not just a vehicle for the rabbis. But for the Christians, it's a problem then. So one critic said that with the first scene of judgment in the whole poem, God judges the one agent that didn't do anything, right? It's a little strange. So you see what that would be a question that and it's interesting that Milton walks right into this, meaning he doesn't try to not address it. You'll see the poverty of his answer you'll see how bad his answer is, that he's really trying to answer a question. Which when the Lord God heard, without delay to judgment, he proceeded on the accursed serpent, though brute, unable to transfer the guilt on him who made instrument of mischief. Now I can forgive myself for not reading this properly because it's a really hard, it's a hard set of verses to read, because I'll tell you why grammatically or syntactically it's difficult, is because the object of the first sentence becomes the subject of the next one. The object of the first sentence becomes the subject of the next one. In the first sentence, without delay to judgment, he proceeded on the accused. So who is God passing judgment on?
The serpent.
The serpent, and he's the object, right? God passes judgment on the object serpent. But now in line 165, when you continue reading, now the serpent is the subject of the next verb. Serpent, though brute, unable to transfer the guilt on him who made him instrument of mischief. Well, maybe he misread. See, his reading was that this. You see that who is unable to transfer the guilt?
The serpent.
The serpent.
Serpent onto Satan.
No, it could be God.
Right. It really. I mean, Professor
Oh
Castan.
no, it's a pronoun.
Professor Castan said it's seems like the serpent, but it's obviously God. But it sure does seem like it, doesn't it? Meaning the theological pshat of the text, the theological meaning of the text demands that it's God, right?
Fowler says it's serpent. Just FYI.
Can
FYI,
we go
Fowler?
over?
Yeah.
Can we go over the like 3 lines again?
Let's do it. Which when the Lord God heard, without delay to judgment, he proceeded on the accused serpent, though brute. Yeah, it does seem like God, doesn't it? Unable to transfer the guilt on him who made instrument of mischief. Who couldn't do it? God couldn't do it. But
My
Fowler,
notes,
but
my notes
Fowler,
say it's the serpent.
but Fowler, FYI, says the serpent.
Yeah, there's a note about it.
Right. I looked at that very. I just kind of got lost in that note. I was like, it's just like, can you pile more on here? I mean, that's what he's doing though. That's his job.
Yeah.
Right?
Can I
I
ask
thought-
about?
What's that?
Can I ask about the interpretation of it as God? Because one second.
Oh, I'm sorry.
because-
I'm misreading it. It can't be. It can't. It
It
sounds
can't be
like
God.
God.
Is
It can't
as-
be God. Sorry, Anatol. I got
Yeah.
it. I just reversed it. Right.
Of his
cannot be
creation, it
God.
can't be a God.
Can't be God because God. How could God be unable to do it? God's God.
Yeah. But also polluted from the end of his creation. It has to be talking about God at that point.
Unable to transfer the guilt on him who made him instrument of mischief and polluted from the end of his creation. Justly then accursed, cursed as vitiated. What does vitiated mean? Negated, I
Prescribed?
think, nullified, spoiled. Just like it's ruined of its purpose, I think. Justly then accursed as vitiated in nature, more to know, concerned not man since he no further knew. How do you explain that sentence? This is another part of the passage that Professor Castan pointed out to me. How do you make sense of line 170? See, you're cracking up again. I feel like this is a $6 million man. How do you make sense of that line?
I'm
No,
still confused about the 3 lines above.
I know I haven't. Well, yeah. Go ahead.
When you say he was unable to transfer the guilt on him, the he could be either the serpent or God, and the guilt on him, either the serpent or Satan. Is that it?
No, I think that the question is why is it that the guilt has not been transferred from the not guilty party
Well,
to,
God can't
to
transfer.
the guilty party?
But
But
it
who are
doesn't,
they?
but just because God is all powerful doesn't mean he can transfer guilt on somebody who doesn't deserve it.
But who?
Yeah,
But
couldn't we relate it to God's
party is the
justice?
not guilty party.
What's the question here? I'm sorry.
Because he was in
See, you know
heaven.
what? I'm as confused as you are, so I'm going to let you take over. See what were you saying?
I don't get anything. I'm sorry. I'm very confused.
Is
Bro, I
this,
feel like it's so stupid here.
No. It's fine. I'm with you. See, I don't think I followed any one of those questions.
is there a problem that the
Just
serpent?
because you guys are going too fast for me. That's all. They're all good questions, I'm sure.
The serpent isn't guilty because the Satan was inside of him. It's that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
He was a vessel. Yeah, he was a vessel.
So couldn't we just understand the serpent as a microcosm of the world? And we're going to see shortly that the world undergoes what?
I love this. I love this interpretation, but you're not helping me understand as we would say in the yeshiva world, the pashtut, right? The simple meaning.
Well, the pashtut is God's justice.
No. But I just want.
Surely.
Well, that is surely a problem, right? But I'm still trying to figure out. I mean, I'm trying to just figure out the syntax of the statements. But what you guys are raising, that is the stakes of what's going on here, which is what Professor Castan said we didn't really note here. That in a book about the justice of God's ways of justice, the explaining the ways of God to man, this kind of screams out at you that the first person the first agent that's being punished is innocent. So yeah, that's a reason to stick on this. But also, I want to look at this one line here: "Concern not man, since he no further knew."
The snake doesn't understand.
He didn't know better because he didn't have the fruit of knowledge before. Maybe.
Wait. Okay.
Isn't it woman who accuses the snake?
Let's just understand first the simple meaning. You guys are always like more advanced than me. So Milton is, as I said, his answer is not so clear. We're still not understanding it. More to know, and you can see that Milton is dealing with this as a question, meaning he knows there's a problem here, but he says I'm avoiding it. More to know, concern not man.
Yeah,
I'm not right. Since he no further knew. Professor Castan points out that it should say, because he no further knew. Right?
What's the difference? Since, because? It's
mean-
still
More to know concern not man. I would understand that as more to know concern not man, because there are limitations to God, to his knowledge. Because there are.
Because they're essentially interchangeable.
Are they? What? How is
English at that time? Yeah.
but he
I'm go-
definitely sidesteps
I'm
it,
going to
right?
OED check it quickly.
Yeah, since and because here are interchangeable, I think.
I don't. You know. So it's like.
Since I didn't come to the party, I couldn't, whatever. I mean, you know, it's because.
Yeah, but he could have chosen because. You say it's another.
It's
It's another.
less,
It's
it's
another.
less poetic.
It's another syllable.
They don't use because in poetry much. It's,
No,
Is
that's
it
that's here.
possible?
There we have the digital humanities now.
Already
them.
being used instead of because in the 1450s, according to the OED.
But he's just said not. It's used less. He said that was his argument.
Sense in modern English is not used, is not interchangeable with because.
They don't seem to say.
In modern English, it definitely is, but in English, even most of the time,
Okay,
because
I'm
it's
just.
used in it's used in Herbert's poetry. It's used in Donne in that way. Does
anybody want to?
What difference do you see in between because and since?
I don't know. It just sounds different to me. Is anybody?
What is
But
the
not the
nuance?
meaning, only the sound, not the meaning in itself?
I don't know. Yeah, I don't know. So let's read it again. More to know concern not man.
In other words, the verdict on man is not impacted by this very issue that we're
Right.
trying to resolve.
More to know concern not man, since he no further knew nor altered his offense. Yet God at last to Satan first in sin his doom applied. This is interesting also, though in mysterious terms judged then as best. This whole passage is just filled with mysterious terms, right? On the one hand, it's Satan who's being punished in mysterious terms. I mean,
The thing is, though,
yeah,
that
I mean, you just love that. Like Satan is like, oh, it's only a bruise.
Basically saying
Right.
it's none of your business.
but at the end of the
Yeah,
book,
yeah.
he understands the serpent's punishment as his own. He says, I will bite them at the ankle and they will bruise my head. And he says, bruising of a head is a little price to pay for having thought about the fall.
But little does he know, as we said last time, Satan, of course, thinks he's the serpent because he's a literalist. And there's an identity, and and when he says, oh, it's only a bruise, Satan doesn't know the whole story. I mean, Satan's assertion of independence, so on the one hand, you say, well, you see this incredible explosion of independence in Satan, and it's there, but Satan doesn't know his limitations. And he doesn't know the story that he's in. He doesn't realize that the story that he's in is more complicated than he understands.
Wait,
And the reason he doesn't understand it is because he doesn't have the ability to transcend the physical ever. He's just always in the physical. And that's why there's there's that weekly humiliation of them in hell, in which they're turned into serpents. They're turned into ashes. They're rendered into the most physical thing. Yeah, sorry, Ben.
So what's the deal with judged as then best? This part I did not get.
I don't know. Mysterious terms, I think, he felt that was the best thing at the time, to punish Satan in terms that are not immediately understandable or accessible. And I think that's true of the reader as well. I mean, first of all, that I think there's something mysterious about this passage, and Milton, maybe you're saying Milton is mystifying it on purpose. There's something we can't fully understand. Yeah, sorry, not to.
Well, what?
I think Milton tells us what he's doing, though.
Yeah.
More to know, concern not man, since he no further knew, nor altered his offense. It's none of our concern what happens to the snake. It's none of our concern what happens to Satan here. That's what
doesn't sense, this is what's bothering me. Doesn't sense imply futurity, the future?
I don't, not necessarily, I think.
Okay.
I think he's saying the mysterious are the ways of God, and he decided to punish the snake.
There you go, right. And basically saying that to us as well, you know.
You say that again? I didn't hear it.
Whoever said that, say that again.
No, I said because we can't understand the ways of God, it's too mysterious for us. He for his own reasons, he decided to punish the snake.
Right.
And we should accept it because he knows best.
No,
So
but
be-
here the notes say that it doesn't punish the snake. It's just the nature of the snake has been transformed.
If somebody said that in a Talmud shiur, you would say, "Get out of here." I mean, it's not a very good answer, is it?
Well,
So
we
a very
perceive the snake
metaphorical answer that ignores the
differently.
text.
What's that? Yeah, it's just moving. It's moving away from the text too fast.
When we were asking above if it
Yeah.
was God who could not transfer guilt or the serpent,
Yeah,
I
we
think
don't
the
know.
answer is in this line because now he's answering it. Yet God at last to Satan first and sin. So I think it is God that couldn't transfer the guilt.
I don't even get the word yet in 171.
Where's that?
In 171, yet God. Why is it yet? Why? I don't even get the
Yet God at last. I mean,
It's a contradiction of the previous sentence.
just to notice one thing that we can understand. It's just a great line. And yet God at last to Satan first, right? So the God at last has this idea. On the one hand, it's God at last, thank God at last. On the other, God at last, like the last thing, the end of things, and the sense in which God occupies a temporal reality in which everything's already happened. Yet God at last, and then we return to the temporal, to Satan first, and soon in sin his doom applied, though in mysterious terms. So I don't understand the and the yet either, but I just wanted you to pick up the at last and first. Yeah.
Sorry, isn't that yet there because he's contradicting his previous sentence? Concern not man, it's none of our business, but I'm going to tell you anyway, yet God did actually punish Satan.
Oh, okay, got it.
Yeah,
because
thank you for that. Yeah,
that's good.
I think that yet refers all the way up to the guilt on him. That unable to transfer the guilt on him who made his instrument of mischief, yet God at last to Satan first.
Why does he write like this? Because it does seem to, it's like.
So the yet positions the.
Yeah, I mean, I think what you read, what nothing else said is obviously the case, but it does lend itself to that reading, which I didn't really see right away, but it does read that way. You can read it that way. So it's just like, why is he so? It's like, so why is he so intentionally confusing here? But I think maybe that our simple frame for it goes back to how we were reading the text, is that there are, especially in the realm of Satan, there are certain terms that he can't possibly understand. And the only way he understands them is when they're literalized. That is when he himself burns or whatever, becomes pure matter. Then the point I get is made to him in such emphatic terms that he's in a story which he does not fully control. But yes, Professor Castan does raise for us the question of justice, which is screaming out in this passage.
And if this,
let me say one more thing I want you guys to consider. He said that he said here, ready? That here Theodicy fails, and that Milton is desperate. You see, just my instincts for teaching it are so different than his. He edited there's a Castan Milton, which you should probably find. I'm sure it's really smart, but idiosyncratic, so that's why people don't buy it as much. No, David, I do not have it. I never got a copy. He said that it's a sign of Milton's desperation and the failure of Theodicy. You can see why you would say that, right?
About which?
Milton is desperate here. He's running into a theological problem, and he can't deal with it. And he takes out his, Tipex, and he puts it over, right? You remember the old Tipex stuff you used to use when we used to write things, right? And what was the thing when you used Tipex on like a typewriter? Did you ever know that it wasn't there? It was always there. You could always see it. And that's what Castan is saying here, that he's putting the Tipex on, and you see how much he mushed it up. It's so obvious that he's dealing with a mistake that he's really not doing a very good job hiding. Yes, Nathan.
Yeah, so I understand where he's coming from. I think the thing that I'm seeing here, which is kind of that failure of Theodicy, is He set out to justify the ways of God to man.
Mm.
And here he's saying the ways of God are too mysterious for man to understand. So we've returned to the original problem that he set out
no.
to.
I don't think that's the case. I mean, there's certain things man doesn't have to know. But there are certain things that man does have to know. You don't have to know whether Copernicus or Ptolemy was right, but you do have to know the deal with free will. So you're saying this is one of those. So even within the context of Milton's providential framework of justification, well, there's a little fetch you have to make, right? Well, and even there you can't ask a question, right? That we didn't know. Didn't know. I'm defending Milton here. But yeah, Ben, go ahead.
Yeah.
Okay, sorry. I guess we're going a little bit fast for me, but I don't even see what is mysterious about God's decision to first in sin his doom apply to Satan. What's mysterious about that? Or hard to understand about that?
No, because he chose the serpent instead of Satan.
Right. I think that's what it is.
Okay. But in 165, he used the word serpent, but not in that sentence. If that's what's mysterious, why doesn't it say, yet God at last, the serpent, first in sin?
Because he's punishing the serpent, not Satan. We'd expect, he's punishing Satan indirectly, but he's not directly punishing Satan.
So you're right. You just see how he's like.
So does it mean?
So to me, the answer is Milton makes these questions so obvious. And he also has, you can read it one way, you can read it another way. Each part you can kind of twist around. Yet God, so let me get God at last to Satan. And you're right, it should be the serpent, right? Like why does Milton, if he's so desperate, why does he stick the problem in our face? That would be my question back to the reading that Milton is desperate. If you're desperate, you don't foreground it like that. If you're desperate, you don't make that. Or am I reading the psychology wrong? If you're desperate, you don't. Pardon?
Sorry, that was a cynical comment. It assumes no one got this far in the book.
It assumes what?
No one got this far in the book. It was a cynical comment. Apologies.
It's okay. As you said, you're a British person. You're cynical. It's okay. You get a pass. We're keeping track. Yeah. Anybody else?
Yeah. What was your instinct about this future sense of sense? Where were you going with that?
I don't know. I'm still working on it. I don't know.
Did it involve teleology?
Sense for you indicates temporality, not causality.
I guess maybe that's more. Is right. You can say since I'm going anyway, I'll pick up some tomatoes. Could you say because in that way, in the same way?
Yeah, because I'm going to the supermarket, I'll get you some tomatoes.
You wouldn't say that the sense works much better.
It's not how you use it. It sounds awkward, but
yeah, I went through the OED and found the different uses
the whole OED.
Well, their account on sense.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, and
I'm sure that was probably quite a bit of work, though, right?
I like dictionaries.
Okay. And Dvora, if you're still there, you still get the nerd award for Milton Club, right? Just to know how good that was, Milton Club. Go ahead, Tigla.
Yeah, so it could mean immediately afterwards.
Okay.
Could mean now or like already. So already, no further new doesn't really work as well. The one that I liked was subsequently, which I thought could be quite interesting.
Subsequently meaning that it would just be a non-cause, that's temporal.
Right. No, most of the meanings are temporal.
No, or call it, but I see the temporal now that you mentioned that, but I think the causal is obviously there as well. And it seems that Milton is suggesting both of them at the same time.
Yeah.
And it's not like you could substitute one and say, well, this is right. The sense does, I think, seem wrong, but then you but the logical reading is, as you guys are saying, is because, right? But still,
I just looked up the etymology, and the Middle English says it means afterwards.
Right. I mean, it lacks. There's correlation, but since lacks a certain implication of causation that because.
Right. Very good. So right. So I'm kind of stuck here, but I think we have given ourselves the tools, and we understand that Milton is using a word both in a temporal sense and in a causal sense, and it would have been easier had he avoided it. But he doesn't avoid it, right? He walks right into these things. Meaning, it's almost like he raises your question and then he answers them. Yeah,
Would Milton be a great poet?
I know you're having a hard time with this, and there's a good reason for it. It's opaque. Sorry, Natamo?
Would Milton be a great poet if he just avoided it? It would have been a huge flaw in the poem. It would have been glaringly obvious that there's a problem with his Theodicy if the serpent is the one that gets punished.
Right. See, the problem with reading Milton's poem from the point of view of an angelic or satanic perspective is either one of those poems, if they existed, would be far more boring than this poem, right? They would be versions of polemic. So that's the thing about Milton, is he has both of those polemics in the same time, or they're different forms of argument.
Professor, let's say
Yeah.
his sense is.
And I mean, a deconstructionist would say, oh, well, Milton's just self-exploding here. But I don't think so. I think it's that Milton addresses this because he feels obligated to. He's honest.
Professor, if sense it's temporality, then how do you read more to know concern no man, sense no further knew?
I don't. I said in a way when I was saying I don't know. I give up here. Meaning I just said we have the tools now to look at it. So now it's kind of up to you to like figure it out.
As for the concern I raised earlier about the word mysterious, now I sort of feel silly because now it seems obvious to me that what it's saying is God at last meaning the last in the sequence of who gets punished, gets Satan in his doom applied, and it's the serpent who gets it first. So it's actually not weird that he says Satan instead of serpent here. That would change the meaning if he did say serpent.
I don't know if I'm just being the dumb reader, but every time somebody suggests one reading, I forget the other reading.
I have the other reading.
Right? It's kind of like looking at
saying God judges Satan first, but this is mysterious for the reason that it is the serpent, but this is the very issue that we started, which is the way in which Satan and the serpent are united is a mystery. It's serious. So in him judging the one first, he is in fact judging Satan.
Okay.
So I think the mystery is just that possession, or however this relationship.
Right. So I just think it's really cool. And first of all, my elder teacher would write to me about this, but also you just see the way he really just, he made us stop. And this passage I think is especially difficult. I do think so. And just, having these other questions about really this question of guilt or innocence, all of the ambiguities and ambivalences that we spoke about, it's just nice to have those questions asked, and I'm glad we took the time to do that. Can we take a break now, since this wasn't what we were supposed to do?
Hold on a second. So who gets the punishment? Satan or the serpent?
Wait.
All of us.
Everyone gets punished.
That's
the real Theodicy.
In the passage, in the stanza.
The serpent gets it first.
The reptile.
The reptile.
Could the serpent be a metonymy for Satan?
I don't know how that helps us that much.
Not in this passage, I would say.
Well,
only
if you
Satan
say that
is being put on his belly and shall eat dust. The next passage will make that very problematic.
Does everybody know what metonymy means?
Yeah.
it could be metonym. I could be using the wrong word.
No, you said it beautifully.
Okay.
What's a metonymy?
It's a phrase that is used as a kind of a euphemism for another phrase, for another thing. So like when you say the White House, the White House said, it means the government. That's
synecdoche. So metonymy is I'm pretty sure of this. Metonymy is part for part. Synecdoche is part for whole. Right? You could say, ready for this? I'm gonna really
part for whole.
Right. So sit down.
Phrasing the Hebrew is so much better.
So sit down, Tifa, because this is gonna upset you. You can really think of the transition from Milton's culture of the 17th century to the culture of the 18th century, which is more scientific, is the move from synecdoche to metonymy.
What's the first one? How are you spelling
That's
that?
essentially Bacon, no?
I don't. Well, I would think the metonymy is more associated with Bacon. I would have thought.
Yeah, metonymy is Bacon.
Wait. Didn't you see the movie? Isn't there like a movie called Synecdoche? I never saw that actually.
Yeah.
Is that like syncretized?
No, a synecdoche is when you have one part. We see it all the time with Milton, right? When a part stands in for the whole, right? Mm-hmm. It's a whole. You see one thing, but really you see the whole world. Man in the man as little world is like a synecdoche for the whole cosmos. Right?
That's not what I meant.
That's where there's always a hierarchy. Metonymy is just one thing stands in for another thing.
But synecdoche is S-Y-N?
S-Y-N, yeah. So synecdoche is difference that is subordinated. Metonymy is unsubordinated difference. So this and this and this and this and this and this. Just nice. It's
and
nice
metonymy,
yeah.
Metonymy is Milton 17th. Yeah?
What?
You did the historical thing. So
yeah.
Metonymy is Milton 17th century.
No. So again, really, synecdoche is really a way of thinking about what we've been thinking about all along, is the way in which difference and similarity are related. And for Milton, we see the extent to which, and that in the very tropes that Milton uses of microcosm and macrocosm, and I mean that there's still a world. And as we're speaking this, I'm not really sure. For me, the poet of synecdoche is done, right? Man is little world, right? And physical and spiritual are really connected. So the Milton of Book 5 also is like that. In order for spiritual and physical to be connected, in order for there to be some connection between the two, there has to be some way in which diversity exists within the context of similarity. That starts to break open in the 18th century. And all you do is you just have diversity. You don't have anything containing it. You no longer have ways of saying the things that appear different are really in some way the same. That poetic trope kind of falls away.
Is that really so I don't know, is that really so evocative of the scientific developments in the...
What do you mean?
Well, you said that the synecdoche is of the 16th century?
Well, we're just saying 17th. Like Shakespeare
17th century?
Shakespeare done Milton. You know?
Okay.
Yeah.
And then metonymy is
Locke.
Is somehow corresponding with
Hobbes' Locke.
With Hobbes' Locke, the more scientific.
Well, remember that Locke says, I think we went over this, that you should not, that the poet will mislead you through his similitudes, right? Be careful. The poet says things that aren't alike are alike, right? You have to stay away from people like that.
Locke said that.
Yeah, because for Locke wants to, he sees the distinctions between things. We saw this in Donne and Bacon, right? Donne is a poet who sees, I think very much like Milton, who sees the distinction between things, but also sees their similarities. He sees distinctions. Like we said that for Donne, Bacon is in his head, right? Bacon is inside his head and he's like answering Bacon. And he feels the question of Bacon very, very strongly. And I think we say the same thing with Milton here, is he feels all of his own questions very, very strongly, but he doesn't back down from them.
And Bacon does?
Technical question.
Yeah, go ahead.
When I learned literature in Hebrew, there's a word that's called a milat sulfan, which is a word that carries a lot in it. So like when you use the phrase barbed wire in Holocaust poetry, it carries a lot of weight because of all the connotations. What's the phrase in English for that?
Polyvalency.
No, guys. I'm gonna start to like go into like a literary critical, gonna have some kind of seizure here. Don't say. If somebody says, no, it's
more questions about literary criticism.
It was Tom. It was your polyvalence that set me over the top. Okay, that was it, right?
But Professor, I back to what Ben asked about. Yeah. I get why Donne and Milton and Shakespeare are the synecdoche, but why are Bacon the metonymy? Why is Bacon the materialist?
No, so Bacon, as we said, he also, remember aphorism 55, you'll remember this until your dying days, ad mea estrim, that Bacon, the aphorism, our favorite aphorism in Bacon's Novum Organum is number 55, right? There are two kinds of people in the world, people who see the differences between things and people who see the similarities between things. And we said that Bacon's perspective, the perspective that he really introduces is that of difference. He values in that aphorism 55 both of them. He said both make it is. He talks about how they both can make mistakes. You can see too many distinctions, or you can see too many similarities. But for Bacon, his basic move is saying we're going to live in a culture in which people only see similarities, and they don't see the world as a result. It's what scientists say to literature people, right? Look at the world. These stories you tell are not relevant. They'll tell you about the world, right? So Bacon begins that, Hobbes, Locke. And those people become their assumptions about the world become so strong and powerful. And then they get reinforced by Newton, right? Which is a different version of science, that empiricism starts ruling. And when empiricism means I'm looking at everything in its particularity. I see it in front of me. So yeah, but that shift is happening all along. And Milton he's in conversation with all these people also. In books 11 and 12, you can see him kind of talking to Descartes or talking to Hobbes, right?